Okay, so Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, all right, they write something called the Communist Manifesto. And this comes after the 1848 revolutions. Because after the 1848 revolution, they were absolutely convinced that Europe is ready for a global revolution, okay? And this is their agenda. And this is also a secret document because at this time, the communists are a secret society all around Europe, okay? And I would argue that this was probably being funded by the nobility, okay? Okay, so it calls for all abolition of property, all right? No more property. That's pretty extreme. So because again, remember, the middle class wants to support socialism, but it cannot support communism. Socialism is just a redistribution of wealth. Communism is the abolition of wealth. Two different things, all right? All abolition of inheritance. Okay, again, you're middle class. You're like, I worked really hard to make this money. I want to give it to my children. Now I can't anymore, okay? This is pretty awful. All right, centralization of credit in the hands of the state, okay? By means of a national bank. Okay, and you think, okay, this sounds pretty extreme. But you know what? They already do this in capitalism. It's called the Bank of England, right? All right. So there are already a lot of similarities between capitalism and communism. Remember, the Bank of England is where all wealth around the world is stored, right? So a centralized bank in communist system, it's the same thing, right? Centralization of the means of communication, right? A party. Well, this is just the capitalist class, an oligarchy. Like, does it really matter if it's an oligarchy or a party? It's the same thing, really, right? Extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state, equal liability of all work, combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries. All right, so this is the idea of creating a proletariat, all right, or manufacturing. And this is what capitalists want, guys, okay? So at this time, most of the world is agricultural, feudal, and this calls for the creation of a manufacturing industrial economy. This is what capitalists want, right? Because that way they can better exploit people. Free education for all children. And you're like, oh, well, that's great, man. Free schooling. No, it's not. Because now you can brainwash them, right? This is brainwashing. So, you're like, okay, well, this agenda is communist. Well, if I'm a capitalist, I'm okay with this agenda, right? I'm happy with this agenda. What's wrong with this agenda? Right? All right. When the course development, class distinctions have disappeared and all production has been concentrated in the hands of vast association of the whole nation, the public power will lose its political character. Political power, properly so called, is merely the organized power of one class for oppressing another. The proletariat during its contest with the bourgeoisie is compelled by the force of circumstances to organize itself as class. If by means of a revolution it makes itself the ruling class, and as that sweeps away by force the old conditions of production, then it will, along with these conditions, have swept away the conditions for the existence of the class antagonism of classes generally, and will thereby have abolished its own supremacy as a class. Okay, all right, so this sounds very complex, but it's not, okay? First of all, it establishes the proletariat and the bourgeoisie are the real enemies, not between the capitalists and the monarchy, between capitalism and religion. The real conflict is class, between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, okay? And for the proletariat to win, they need a party, okay? They need a vanguard party. But hey, once this vanguard party establishes itself and destroys class, it will go away. Okay, do you understand? It will give up power voluntarily. It will choose to not exist anymore. This has never happened in history before, but trust us on this one, okay? This time will be different. All right. All right. Okay. So, this is interesting. In the Communist Manifesto, it says, okay, Switzerland, we support the radicals. In Poland, we support the Agrarian Revolution. In Germany, we support the bourgeoisie, the proletariat, okay? So in different places, they have different concerns. They have different needs, right? And what these people are saying is that we're not part of the national conspiracy. All we want is a more fair, just society. That's all we want. We're not part of a secret society bent on world domination. What the Communist Manifesto says is, yes, you are. Yeah, we're all part of this great conspiracy to conquer the world and establish communism. Right? So why would they do that? Why would they do that? That's really strange, guys. Right? Why would they admit we are a national conspiracy, we're a secret society, this is a secret document that we read amongst ourselves. But it's also possible for you to steal and show that, yes, there is this secret society, a national conspiracy of Jews who are trying to destroy the world. Okay? Really interesting. Okay, so now I want to talk about 1917. What happens in 1917 is this. World War I is breaking out, okay? And the Russians are losing the war. The Tsar, Nicholas II, he abdicates. And now you have a democratic government in Russia. But then the Bolsheviks are an extreme communist faction, okay? They launched the October Revolution. So basically they seize power for themselves. And then they have an election. As you can see from this election, the Bolsheviks, even though they have seized power, they're not as popular, okay, as the socialists. Okay? The socialists are going to argue for more gradual change. The Bolsheviks want radical change. So you can see 17 million people voted for the socialists, only 10 million people voted for the Bolsheviks, even though the Bolsheviks controlled the government, okay? And also, look at this. At the end of the day, they only got 23% of the popular vote, okay? So they are not a popular faction. They're a minority, okay? And so this launches the Civil War, okay? And as you can see at this time in history, yes, the communists have control over the major cities of Russia, but they don't really control most of Russia. In fact, they have lots and lots of enemies. They have the whites to deal with. The whites is basically the nobility, okay? And they have also allied armies who come in. They have the Greens, who are the peasants, okay? They have lots and lots of enemies. And at this time in history, you cannot possibly expect that the Bolsheviks would win this battle, okay? But they do. All right, here's something interesting. This is the Romanovs, okay? The Romanovs. Sorry. The Romanovs. The Romanovs have been in power in Russia for 100 years, okay? And the Romanovs are beloved by the peasants. And they themselves are part of the Orthodox tradition. They're also relatives of the nobility of Europe, okay? So England and Germany. All right? So this is the Tsar, Nicholas II. The Tsar here is Nicholas II. Okay? And these are all his relatives. This is the Romanov dynasty. Now, when the revolution broke out, you would think that they would just run away to Europe, right? Where their relatives are. They didn't do that. They just stuck around. So the question then is, why would they just stick around? The answer is, they never believed they were in danger, okay? First of all, they could not expect the Bolsheviks to win out, but also they're beloved by the peasants, they're part of the Orthodox Church tradition, and they have relatives who are the most powerful people in Europe, including in England, including in Germany, right? The Kaiser. So they thought they were fine. But then something strange happens. The Bolsheviks decides to kill every one of them. Okay? They wipe out the Romanov family. Between 17 and 18 of members of the Romanov family were assassinated. And you're like, that makes no sense. Why would they do that? By doing that, first of all, you piss off the peasants, right? You turn the peasants against you because the peasants love the royal family. You now get the families of Europe pissed off at you because you killed their relative, but also you come across as fanatical, bent on world revolution, okay? And then you piss off the Orthodox as well. So these communists are fanatics. So, but let's just assume they're not fanatics, and let's assume that, in fact, they had a good reason to do this. Why would they do that? Okay? And the answer is this. The Romanovs had billions and billions of dollars in foreign banks. Okay? In the city of London, on Wall Street. Okay? A lot of their wealth, billions and billions of dollars, is stored overseas. What happens if they die? What happens if they all die? Right? Guess what? These billions now belong to the foreign banks. That's a lot of money, man. And in fact, this is exactly what happened where they all died and the foreign banks just took control over this money. And this is one of the great controversies of the 20th century. Okay? The government of Russia has been trying for a long time to get this money back, and the foreign bank's like, well, you don't own this money. It's the Romanovs who own this money. Okay? So this is evidence that the communists and the capitalists actually are friends. They're working together. Okay? Does that make sense, guys? All right. Let's continue. All right, another thing is that, again, the Bolsheviks are not that popular. Okay? The peasants are pissed off at them because they just killed a noble family. There aren't that many workers. So how can they fight this war? Well, they fight this war using mercenaries, okay? From Latvia, from China, from the Hungarians, okay? So, and there's about over 200,000 of these mercenaries. And you're like, wait a minute here. How did these guys get paid? The Bolsheviks don't have any money. How are they getting paid? Right? And the answer is, well, Wall Street, guys. Wall Street and the city of London gave the Bolsheviks money to pay these mercenaries. It was Wall Street who paid for these mercenaries. You know, and you're like, why would they do that? And the answer is because the Bolsheviks, to pay Wall Street back, created the Red Terror. Okay? The Red Terror is when the Bolsheviks basically went to all the rich people in Russia, the nobility, and says, you have to give me all your money or I will rip your daughter. I will kill your wife. I will kill you. Right? And guess what? By doing that, they made a lot of money. And that money went to pay Wall Street for the foreign mercenaries. Again, capitalists and communists work well together, okay? Then you have the Allies, right? So Britain, America, France, Japan sent these huge armies to Russia. And everyone thought, okay, it should destroy communism because these are capitalists, they're afraid of the communists. But in fact, that's not what happened, okay? They went to collect debt. Okay, so Russia owed these countries money. The Bolsheviks paid off this debt. So then the Allies left and attacked the whites. Okay? All right? So the Allies helped the Bolsheviks, and Wall Street gave money to the Bolsheviks for mercenaries. And that's how the Bolsheviks won the war. Does that make sense? All right? So capitalists and communists work well together because they have a similar worldview. All right. So this is a passage from a book called Wall Street and the Russian Revolution by Richard Spence, okay? And Richard Spence is a historian, and he had lots of documentation where Wall Street is actually financing the Bolsheviks. And he explains why this has happened. He says that Wall Street wants to destroy the Russian economy, okay? Destroy the Russian economy because Russia is a threat, okay? And then it wants to steal the riches and the resources from the Russians, okay? That's the purpose of financing the Bolsheviks, to destroy the Russian economy and to steal the wealth of Russia. All right? From 1918 until 1921, the Bolsheviks reduced Russia to an economy based on barter and robbery. Okay? So the Bolsheviks basically stole everything from the rich, the middle class, and the poor to finance their war. Besides the abolition of private trade and the destruction of the monetary system, the Red regime embarked on a massive looting campaign, ransacking palaces, bank vaults, churches, and museums. Okay, we call this asset stripping. So basically, the Bolsheviks destroyed their own society in order to get the money to finance this war, in order to pay off Wall Street, okay? They expropriated every valuable they could get their hands on and stashed it all in a new state treasury. By the close of 1921, an estimated $450 million in valuables had been sequestered there, with more to come. Much of it is destined to be fenced abroad for a fraction of its value in capitalist hard currency, okay? So basically, the Bolsheviks stole everything in order to finance the war, okay? And in the process, by destroying their tradition, by destroying their wealth, by destroying their religion, by destroying their nobility, it made the Soviet Union now much more amenable to capitalism. And that's what happened when the Soviet Union fell, it became capitalist, okay? So this shows us is that capitalism and communism are not enemies. They're partners in world conquest. And that's what the 20th century is about. All right? Any questions?